proud of you. It was nice to not sweat one out, right? It was nice to come in and to have high energy, right? To play together, to continue to build on a lead. Tye?
Watch that carefully. That's Stephanie White talking about Tye Harris after a blowout win against the LA Sparks. Notice the emotion in her voice, the way she lights up praising a role player who had one good game. Now keep that energy in mind because we're about to show you something that reveals a pattern Indiana Fever fans have been screaming about for months. The contrast is impossible to ignore once you see it.
A world of trouble.
You know what's funny?
Now, Sophie Cunningham kind of throws Brianne January under the bus yesterday on her podcast and the Fitness Mercury as well.
So
let's listen.
Okay. We are not going to win very many games when people score 100 points on us, and they average, I think, around 80 points, and we let them score like 111. Our defense is horrible, and I think everyone knows that.
Okay. There it is. Kelsey Mitchell just threw her own defensive coordinator under the bus on a podcast. She said their defense is horrible, that they're giving up 111 points when the league average is 80, and everyone knows it. This is a player publicly calling out coaching on her own team. But here's what makes this significant. Mitchell specifically mentioned who runs the defense. Brianna January, the defensive specialist Stephanie White brought in. And according to multiple reports from fans who attended games in Indianapolis, this team has become what one observer called the unfriendliest group in the league this season.
She's talking about right there, Alyssa Thomas and them. Now, this was Charles Barkley's
cannot have
resurfaced.
This ladies, and I'm a WNBA fan. They cannot have this Caitlin Clark thing up any worse if they tried. This girl is incredible. The number of attention, eyeballs she's brought to college and the pros, and for these women to have this petty jealousness, you say to yourself,
that's Charles Barkley from Caitlin Clark's rookie year, and he nailed it then. The WNBA couldn't have handled the Caitlin Clark situation worse if they tried. Petty jealousy, physical targeting, constant negativity. But here's what's changed. We're now in year 2, and instead of the league being the problem, it's her own coach. Stephanie White was supposed to be the hometown hero who understood Indiana basketball. Instead, she's created an environment where the biggest star in women's basketball looks miserable, where teammates are publicly criticizing coaching decisions, and where the body language tells a story the organization doesn't want you to see.
Stephanie White was on the verge of tears talking about Tye Harris' performance tonight before they cut off the clip. Meanwhile, when it comes to praising Caitlin Clark, every compliment sounds like it's being given under duress or gets turned into a group project. The contrast is hard to ignore, shaking my head.
That's from a fan account that's been tracking this all season. The observation is brutal but accurate. Stephanie White gets emotional praising Tye Harris, but every compliment to Caitlin Clark sounds like it's being given under duress. It gets turned into a group project. The praise feels restrained, quickly redirected to the team, or overshadowed by criticism. And once you notice this pattern, you can't unsee it. Every press conference, every post-game interview, the favoritism becomes more obvious.
Goes on to say it wouldn't be an issue if she treated everyone on the team the same. The problem is the double standard. From my perspective, CC often shoulders the blame after losses while other players receive more grace. Even the praise feels different. Stephanie White has shown visible emotion when talking about some players, but with Clark, even when she has a huge night, the compliments often come across as restrained, quickly redirected to the team or overshadowed by criticism. The favoritism shows is difficult to ignore. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that is something that we all have been seeing the entirety.
Read that again. It wouldn't be an issue if she treated everyone on the team the same. The problem is the double standard. Caitlin often shoulders the blame after losses while other players receive more grace. Even the praise feels different. Stephanie White has visible emotion when talking about some players, but with Clark, even when she has a huge night, the compliments come across as restrained. This isn't just one fan's opinion anymore. This is a pattern that hundreds of observers have documented across an entire season. And the evidence keeps mounting. Before her back injury, Caitlin was averaging nearly 20 points per game, putting up MVP-caliber numbers, carrying this team on both ends of the floor. You'd think a coach would be thrilled about that performance. But watch any Fever press conference, and the energy Stephanie White brings when discussing Caitlin versus how she discusses literally anyone else tells you everything you need to know.
Basically, don't like Caitlin. Somebody said, correct, another Oscar performance. This is legitimately effing insane. If you ever been charged in multiple people, you know that different things motivate different people. Now, it's certain people that's still on the Stephanie White bandwagon. Like I told y'all, when I went to Indianapolis, they definitely have a basketball city of their own. And they definitely have a lot of fans that's outside of Caitlin Clark fans, and that is the Indiana Fever fans. And as of right now,
here's where it gets complicated. When the creator of this content went to Indianapolis and interviewed actual Fever fans at games, he discovered something crucial. There's a massive divide between online fans and local Indianapolis fans. The people in Indiana love Stephanie White no matter what. She's their hometown girl, a former Fever player, someone who understands Indiana basketball culture. He interviewed over 5 people who defended her, and the ratio of local support versus online criticism doesn't match at all, so we're dealing with 2 completely different fan bases here. The national audience that follows Caitlin Clark sees the body language, the favoritism, the uncomfortable press conferences. But the local Indianapolis fan base sees a coach who represents their city and their basketball tradition. This divide makes it almost impossible for the Fever front office to make a clean decision, because no matter what they do, they're going to alienate a significant portion of their fan base.
like fans, and I can't put the interview out because I would have to downplay the fans. But to me, they're entitled to their opinions, and it was countless of fans, not just one.
And that prediction might be coming true sooner than anyone expected. Multiple indicators suggest Stephanie White's tenure in Indiana is on borrowed time. The creator said he's 60% sure she's gone after this season, and the evidence is stacking up. Team chemistry issues. Public player criticism of coaching decisions. Historically bad defensive performance despite bringing in a defensive specialist. And most damaging of all, the visible disconnect between the franchise player and the head coach.
Issues. She was averaging nearly 20 points a game, and it was just a beautiful situation for Caitlin Clark, MVP type season. And to me personally, you would think your coach will be a little emotional about that type of performance. Well, I'm here to tell you, the writing just might be on the wall for Steph.
Let's go back to where this started. Before Caitlin's back injury, she was averaging nearly 20 points per game, MVP-type numbers. A beautiful situation for any coach to have. And yet, when you watch Stephanie White discuss those performances, there's no genuine excitement, no pride, no sense that she's coaching a generational talent who's transforming the franchise. Compare that to how she discusses Tye Harris after one decent game. The emotion is immediate, authentic, effusive. That's the kind of energy you'd expect a coach to have about their star player putting up 20 a night. But with Caitlin, it's always measured, always qualified, always redirected to team concepts or other players' contributions. Here's what makes this particularly problematic for the Fever organization. They're not just dealing with a coaching issue, they're dealing with an identity crisis that threatens the entire foundation they've built around Caitlin Clark. Think about what Indiana has invested in this. They built their entire marketing strategy around Clark. Attendance exploded, merchandise sales went through the roof. National television coverage increased dramatically. The Fever went from being a struggling franchise to one of the most watched teams in the WNBA, all because of one player. And now that player is in a situation where her own coach seems unable or unwilling to show genuine enthusiasm for her success. The Kelsey Mitchell podcast comments reveal how deep this problem runs. When a veteran player feels comfortable publicly criticizing the team's defensive scheme and specifically calling out the coaching staff's decisions, that's not just a basketball problem, that's a culture problem. It suggests players don't feel heard, don't trust the system, and don't believe in the coaching staff's ability to fix what's broken. And the defensive numbers back up Mitchell's criticism. Giving up 111 points when the league average is around 80 isn't a small gap. That's a systemic failure. That's a coaching staff that either doesn't have an effective defensive scheme or has lost the locker room's buy-in. Either way, it reflects poorly on Stephanie White's leadership. But here's the bigger question. How did it get this bad? Stephanie White came in with credibility. She's a former WNBA player, a former Fever player specifically, someone who understands Indiana basketball culture. She had coaching experience. She was supposed to be the perfect fit for this franchise and this market. So what went wrong? The most logical explanation is that she never fully bought into building around Caitlin Clark. Maybe she resented the attention Clark receives. Maybe she felt pressure to prove she could develop other players and not just ride Clark's coattails. Maybe she genuinely believes in a more egalitarian approach where no single player gets special treatment, even if that player is carrying the franchise. Whatever the reason, the result is the same, a visible disconnect that's becoming impossible to hide. Body language doesn't lie. When Stephanie White talks about Caitlin Clark, there's a stiffness, a formality, a sense that she's going through the motions of saying the right things without actually feeling them. And in the age of social media, where every press conference gets dissected frame by frame, that disconnect becomes content, it becomes a story, it becomes a problem. Charles Barkley's comments from Caitlin's rookie year remain relevant because the core issue hasn't changed. The WNBA, and everyone around it, still seems unable to fully embrace what Caitlin Clark represents. She's a generational talent who's brought unprecedented attention to the league, but instead of celebrating that, there's resistance, there's resentment. There's a need to qualify her success or spread credit around, or remind everyone that basketball is a team sport. And look, basketball is a team sport, nobody disputes that. But great coaches know how to manage star players while maintaining team chemistry. They know how to praise individual excellence while emphasizing collective effort. They know how to make their best player feel valued while keeping everyone else engaged. Stephanie White appears to be struggling with that balance, and it's showing up in ways that are damaging the franchise. The attendance issues at recent games tell part of the story. The creator mentioned that the LA Sparks game had noticeably low energy and poor attendance. For a team that was selling out arenas earlier in the season, that's a red flag. It suggests fans are losing interest, and when you combine that with the on-court struggles and the visible coaching issues, you have a franchise that's trending in the wrong direction, despite having the most marketable player in the league. This is where the divide between local Indianapolis fans and national Caitlin Clark fans becomes critical. If the Fever fire Stephanie White, they risk alienating their traditional fan base who see her as one of their own. But if they keep her, they risk alienating the massive new fan base that came specifically for Caitlin Clark and doesn't understand why the coach seems uncomfortable praising her own star player. It's a genuine dilemma for the front office. Do you prioritize the local fans who've supported the franchise for years, or do you prioritize the national audience that's driving your television ratings and revenue growth? Do you stick with a coach who represents Indiana basketball tradition, or do you find someone who can better maximize your franchise players' talent and happiness? The 60% prediction that Stephanie White is gone after this season feels increasingly likely. The evidence is mounting. The body language issues aren't going away. The defensive problems aren't getting fixed. The player criticism is becoming public. And most importantly, the franchise player doesn't appear happy or comfortable in this environment. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If you're the Indiana Fever front office, what do you do? Do you fire your hometown coach who represents your traditional fan base, or do you risk losing the biggest star in women's basketball because she's in a situation that clearly isn't working? Because make no mistake, Caitlin Clark has options. She's not trapped in Indiana forever. And if this environment continues to deteriorate, at some point she's going to start thinking about what it would be like to play somewhere else, for a coach who actually gets excited about her success. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Stephanie White makes it through the season? Would you fire her if you were running the Fever? And be honest, if you were Caitlin Clark, would you want to keep playing in this situation? Let me know what you think, and if you found this analysis valuable, hit that like button and subscribe for more WNBA coverage that goes beyond the surface level. This story isn't over, and we'll be here to break down every development as it happens.